Servant leadership is where we rest as high school teachers and coaches. We are providing a service to our students and to our players. We are selling them a product that they've got to have. And we're not only selling them a product, we're selling their parents a product. And their parents are entrusting us to give the very best product that we possibly can to their child, whether it's an education, whether it is character development on the football field, whatever it is, we're giving them a product. And we are serving their needs, whatever those needs are at that time.
Patrick, sincere thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, taking the time, driving up here, and so I sincerely appreciate it. If you would mind, would you go through just a little bit of background, what you do, what makes up your day, kind of your current occupation, just a little bit of sort of that sort of thing for us to get us rolling?
Certainly. So I'm a high school history teacher. I teach all levels of history. I teach advanced placement. I teach American History 1, American History 2, and I teach it to students who are low-level learners as well as exceptional students, far brighter than I am. I also coach high school football, and I've been in this occupation 15 years. I love it. I'm excited to wake up and go to work every day.
Wow.
Absolutely passionate about it. Love the kids, love the relationships. Teach in a small community. It's about 12,000 people in our community. We've got 1,258 students enrolled in our high school. And it's a sense of family. It really is. And that's got its pros and its cons, but it's home more so than a job.
So leadership, if you were asked to define it, given the realm that you influence people in, how would you define it?
Certainly not an expert on leadership, but a book that really inspired me, and a term that I'll steal from that, was Tony Dungy's book on mentor leadership, and really with a focus on service leadership. Servant leadership is where we rest as high school teachers and coaches. We are providing a service to our students and to our players. We are selling them a product that they've got to have. And we're not only selling them a product, we're selling their parents a product. And their parents are entrusting us to give the very best product that we possibly can to their child, whether it's an education, whether it is character development on the football field, whatever it is, we're giving them a product. And we are serving their needs, whatever those needs are at that time. I never know what my day is going to hold. I never know what a kid's going to need. A kid may need lunch money. A kid may need a ride home after practice. And there's certain protocols and procedures in the modern era we have to follow with that, but there's all these things that kids need. Just yesterday, and you talk about leadership in a school, just yesterday I'm having a conversation with our athletic director, and one of our assistant principals walks by, and he's got a doctorate. He's holding a roll of toilet paper. I call him in the room, I say, "Hey doc, what are you carrying toilet paper for?" He said, "Well, we've got a basketball game tonight, and the bathroom down here is out, so I'm replacing it." This guy's got a PhD in education from UVA, and he's replacing toilet paper in the bathroom and smiling about it.
Yeah.
That's the service leadership we're looking for. And that's the kind of guys that we like to surround ourselves with. So, service leadership.
Yeah.
Meeting the needs of our kids.
I remember reading maybe the same book about Tony Dungy and seeing some things about him. And there's certain people, just their lives inspire you to be better. The more you see them, the more you read about them, you just go, I don't know if I'm ever going to wind up like that, but I'm going to read this and I'm going to do a couple things. But Dungy used to talk about the fact that every time, like the first day of practice, when he was coaching in the NFL, that he would huddle the players up and he'd start talking to them. And he'd say, by the way, this is as loud as I'm ever going to be. I don't scream, I don't curse, I don't do this, I don't do, but it really was kind of that tone setting thing that was very different, from what you would think or
That's
what you see or the image that you see of a football coach at any level. How does servant leadership, how does that make it more difficult on at least occasion to manage the expectations of kids, either academically or athletically? Or does it?
I don't know that it does.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think if in your heart you have their best interest in mind, then you're going to put your own expectations and your own self-interest to the side to meet their needs. And I find inspiration from that. When students come back and they thank me for the things that I've done, when I see positive praise in other places, when I see them simply go off and have success, and I know that I had a small part to do in that, I find satisfaction. So for me, it's not a challenge. Of course, it's got its moments when things don't go well, whether they make a poor choice and you feel like, wow, what did I do to let them down? Mm-hmm. And you're reflecting upon the things that you could have done or you should have done, maybe a little differently. The best part about this job and the worst part about this job is every year there's a new batch. You've had one for 4 years and you're going to send them on. Mm-hmm. But here's going to come another. So we've got a 4-year window to develop these kids. And if we look at it that way and we take the pros with the cons, I don't think there is a letdown of expectations because you're not going to win them all.
Yeah, you may be too positive for me because I like to just get mired down in negativity every now and then. So
I think we all do.
One more shot here, right? But so the expectation thing, maybe the challenge isn't as much with the kid, but the challenge is with the parent.
Okay.
So the parent, who's a stakeholder here.
Right.
My kid should be starting. My kid's a
Certainly.
Division I talent. All of that sort of thing. You mentioned parents are one of your biggest stakeholders as well, and you kind of enjoy those discussions. How do you approach that whole dynamic?
That's tough
because they're less than objective.
Yeah, that's tough. In fact, this week alone, I've had 3 conversations about that very topic. One of them didn't even pertain to an athlete at our school. A parent was calling asking for advice from another school because they knew I had to deal with it on the coach's end and what should they do. Mm-hmm. It's a real problem. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be in the spotlight. Our program, we've been very fortunate. We've won at least 10 regular season games for the last 15 years. We have a successful program. One thing's for certain, though, is we haven't won a state championship in that entire span of time. And I think the reason, it's a constant assessment. I think the reason is because we've got a lot of great kids who try really hard, but we always run into a buzzsaw of kids who are bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to disparaging expectations there, that hurts. And the last week or two at the end of the season, those first week or two at the end of the off season, it's all about what can we do to get better. And what did we do that just didn't go our way this past year? So in dealing with the parents, the number one thing, and you talk about leadership, I was in the middle of a ball game one time and a parent wanted to speak to our defensive coordinator. I was an assistant defensive coach at the time. I'm 25 years old, learning a lot. And I learned a lot that night that I'll never, ever, ever forget. And the parent was disappointed and was just adamant, had to talk to the coach immediately, and that's not typical protocol. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, she was able to gain access to him. And she gave him an earful, and the coach said, "Ma'am, this is the way that it's going to be. We love your son. If you don't like it, he doesn't have to play. You can take and leave right now. But if he stays, this is the way it's going to be." So he put it into her court and let her make the decision. Are you going to take him or is he going to stay? And he stayed. At the end of the year, she gave us a plaque thanking us for everything that we did to help her kid. Seriously. He went in the military and he's had a great career there.
Yeah.
But learning that we have a team, and nobody has the right to be on the team. It's a privilege, and it's an opportunity that they don't all have to be afforded. At any time, there's a situation that just can't be remedied with good, casual conversation. Just point out. Mm-hmm. They don't have to play. If you're that upset, maybe you'd be happier somewhere else, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that may not be the answer they want to hear.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for the team.
Always an option. So with all of this, the age-old question, is leadership something you learn or is leadership something you're born with? Are the people that gravitate towards positions and situations, teachers, coaches, corporate leaders, those kinds of things, is that kind of a DNA-driven thing that's in them? Or is it something where you can really study leadership like any other skill, right? You can study it, you can practice it, and you can make yourself a leader. Which side of the philosophical?
Well, leadership doesn't just have to be the president of the United States or the CEO of a company. Leadership could be the child in my class that when the person beside them didn't hear the question or didn't know what page they were supposed to turn to, and they're not asked, but they lean over and they say, this is what he said, or this was the page. That's leadership. Mm-hmm. That young lady or that young guy facilitating and helping the instruction of this person beside him who needed a helping hand. That's leadership. So with that being said, no, I think leadership can be developed. I think leadership can be modeled. And I think we need to do a better job as a society of inspiring and encouraging all of us to be leaders in our own way. With that being said, we've got to understand and have deference for our situation and for our position. Being a leader doesn't mean you're the boss. It just simply means that you're helping someone else.
Yeah. We have a tendency to define it that way. It's like leadership is position power, but you're absolutely right. I mean, leadership is the kid on the team that steps up in the locker room and says, "Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What are we doing?"
Yep.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Why aren't there more good teachers like yourself?
I appreciate the compliment. You haven't seen me teach. Maybe I just doing a good job.
I'll take your word for it.
Doing a good job of pretending here.
You know, everybody thinks about somebody like you. Those people all got us somewhere, right? To where we are, whatever that happens to be, you know. But why aren't there more people that say, you want to know something? This is the stuff I want to do, and I'm going to go to Elon and I'm going to learn some stuff, and I'm going to come back here and I'm going to do this, because what could be better than helping to jumpstart?
Sure.
You know, over the course of your coaching career thus far, your teaching and coaching career, how many kids have you had direct impact on?
Several thousand.
Yeah. So why aren't there more folks like yourself that kind of hear that calling?
Well, it's hard to answer that because it's the only calling I've ever had, and it's the only thing I've ever done. And to assess why someone chooses something else is to just take a guess. So in taking a guess, which I've thought about it, in taking a guess, it may be offensive to others, but it's my opinion. So here it is. Here's the truth.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other people are motivated by greed, by the pursuit of wealth, instead of the pursuit of service. Wealth doesn't, I mean, money you got to have, but I don't find satisfaction in that. Money's great, don't get me wrong, but it's not what gets me up in the morning at all, and it's certainly not what puts me to bed at night. So I don't care. Some sort of fame to go along with that, the fame and fortune thing. There's so many people that they think that this is how fame is defined, and they want to be famous for something. They want to work up that corporate ladder, or they want to be the absolute best that they can be to own their own dealership, or whatever it is. And those things are all great. That's what motivates them. What motivates me isn't greed, and not that greed's a bad thing, but it's not greed, and it's certainly not fame. It's doing what I can to help those folks on the ground. And maybe it's because that's what people did to me, and I appreciated that. Also, I'm a Christian, and my faith background is about meeting the needs of others and putting others before you put the needs of yourself. And so that's what I do.
That's kind of in there someplace? Okay.
Absolutely. Giving is better than receiving, that whole thing, this time of the year.
Yeah.
I will say this, and this is very important, and as I get older and my family begins to get older, it becomes more and more and more apparent. There's only so much of me. And I find myself, and we have these conversations as those teachers who've been around a while and are also leaders of families, I've got to be careful and not to sacrifice the needs of my own family to meet the needs of someone else's. And I find myself, I'm aware of it, but I find myself doing that far too often. I'm busy responding to this parent email or corresponding with a child, but yet my own child has a question. You know, so there is that balance there.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. That's a challenge that when you care so much, there's only so much of you to go around.
Is there a different leader you become in your household than at East Alamance High School? I mean, what's different, what's similar about those two settings?
Well, it's funny. So my
in
wife,
one setting, you're obviously not in charge.
Right. That's a
given.
That.
Yeah.
So, and my lovely bride reminds me all the time, we don't need Coach Stokes. This isn't Coach Stokes' team. Yes, ma'am. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just being a parent, it's managing, it's juggling, it's helping, it's guiding and directing, it's listening to and observing, where do they need me right now? How can I be their leader? Sometimes they need me to step in and advocate for them for whatever reason. Other times they need me to not step in and let them handle this situation. Sometimes they need tough love. Sometimes they need understanding and compassion and a hug, a little honey and a little vinegar. I don't know. You just play it as you go. It's like a ball game. You don't know how it's going to play out, but you better be prepared to make the best decision possible at that moment. Otherwise, you're going to lose and you're going to miss out. The difference is in a ball game, it's a ball game. When it's with your own students or when it's with your own children, you might not get tomorrow to make that new impression. In the last 2 days, I've been super proud of the way that my children have responded to a certain situation. So my daughter, this morning, in fact, is brushing her teeth. And we have one of these electric toothbrushes, and everybody has their own head, and then you take the head off and you put it in. Anyway, so she's using the electric toothbrush, and I've made it clear I've got a meeting and I got to get to work on time. Had to leave early to come here today, so it's a big day. I walk in the bathroom to brush my teeth, and she's brushing her teeth with our toothbrush. I was like, all right, girl, when you finish, I need it. Okay, I'll be right back. 3 minutes or so later, I walk in there. There's the toothbrush with my head on it with toothpaste on it. She's 9. I didn't ask her to.
Wow.
She did that for me. It was super thoughtful.
Oh, yeah.
That was all her. 1,000% that was her. But somewhere along the line, she either received a gift like that or found satisfaction in giving a gift like that, and she decided to do that. So that's Elizabeth. So 2 days ago, Jackson's girlfriend, has a bit of a health issue and says, I'm not going to go to softball workouts. And he says, but is it that bad? Your team needs you to be there. Your coaches expect to see you there. What type of message does it send if you just don't go? You already missed this day last week because of this field trip. Now you're going to miss this day too because you just don't feel real well. I get that you can't practice, but at least you can be there. Show that you care. She says, well, why are you sad? He says, well, if you don't care enough about that part of your life, what other parts of your life do you not necessarily? I'm like, good gracious, Coach Stokes,
wow.
Kind of calm down. But he sees that. He's 15, and he's applying the same things that he's learned from being, in my family and on our football team and other things he's heard from coaches and probably teachers too, to his own relationship. And I don't know if it's going to be great and how that's going to turn out for him, but I'm happy that in his own life he understands the importance of commitment.
Oh, yeah.
And doesn't want to tolerate the lack of commitment from those around him.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, it seems like you got all these people following you around that just somehow, some way are doing all these leadership-related things.
Yeah.
It's possible it has something to do with you and the role modeling that you're doing for them. So, but yeah, those are two awesome stories. It strikes me, from my perspective, much more interested in yours, obviously. There's some parallels between what you do and what goes on in corporate worlds.
Certainly.
And there's some differences. How do you see that? The whole idea of like what you do and then going into an organization or maybe getting politically involved and kind of doing something like that. How do you see, what are the similarities and what are some of the differences?
I think it all boils down to the fact that we're human beings. And we all have these things that intrinsically motivate us. At least if we don't, we should. And I think if people aren't motivated intrinsically, then we got to look somewhere else, whether it's players, whether it's personnel, whether it's staff, teachers, whatever. If they're not motivated naturally showing up, are they really invested in it, and why are they there? If they don't want to be successful, then why are they there? So I hate to quote coaches all the time, but this coach said the best way to motivate your team is to get rid of those that are unmotivated. And that's an honest approach to it. But sometimes we need a little push, right? So whether it's in business or in politics or in coaching or in teaching, whatever it is, it all boils down to the same human characteristics. We're looking for love. We're looking for passion. We're looking for leadership. Even leaders are looking for leadership somewhere. Really believe that. We're looking for discipline and for strategies. I think, too, we're looking for a plan. What is going to get us from point A to point B, and then once we get to point B, how about point C? What if we didn't get to point B? Well, let's regroup and let's figure out what happened. That plan, you got to have a plan in place. I've never led anything except for a team, a classroom, and my family, right? So whether these concepts and practices would apply, I don't know. I'd be interested to find out. But I think because at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all have the same needs. I don't see why there can't be a cross-reference there.
As a history teacher, like, who are 3 or 4 people, maybe more than that, from history that you've studied, maybe in depth, that you've learned something from and said, see if this works or try this or sort of be more like that. Obviously, you have a lot of coach role models.
Right.
but who maybe that we would all be familiar with? Have you studied and said, wow, that was pretty special?
Well, and you mentioned a moment ago, maybe you're more negative than I am. When I study historical figures,
I will guarantee you I'm more negative.
I don't know. I try to. I look at the positives and the negatives. And you I don't want to just emulate my life after this guy. I mean, because there's going to be some negatives, right? Because we're human. I recently saw a Ken Burns documentary on Teddy Roosevelt. Boy, what a great guy.
Oh yeah.
Full of life, full of vigor and just charisma, passionate about everything he did. He had a lot of negatives too going on. But I mean, this guy ate a dozen eggs a day. Every day for breakfast, a dozen eggs. I've only got to 9. I can't get quite to the dozen. No, I'm just kidding. But he was a cowboy, and he took chances, and I admire that. I'm a guy who I haven't taken a whole lot of chances. I mean, I'll take chances here and there, but with my life, he would just pack up and move. And he had the resources to do that. He had some deep pockets.
Yeah.
But that helped him get to where he was. But you talk about leadership. Speak softly and carry a big stick. That was his whole thing on leadership. And then on the other side, his distant cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And this is coming from a man that America didn't know at the time is wheelchair bound, that was a victim of polio, that had been through all types of heartache growing up with a father who was significantly older than his mother and dying at an early age. He went through all types of bullying when he was in boarding school and in college. And this guy says, in the face of the greatest economic disaster this country will ever see, hopefully will ever see, he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And he had a plan. And in the first 100 days, he did more than any other president in the life of their administration. And every president since has been compared to that standard. That's a couple of Roosevelts right there.
Yeah.
And one was a Republican, one's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you want to look back on earlier leaders within history, or I'm an American history guy, as you can tell, but there's a lot of world leaders.
That's fine, yeah. Anywhere you want to go.
Really admire George Washington, not just as a military leader. In fact, I admire him more as a manager of people. That first cabinet had some strong personalities and people who had contributed in great ways to this country. The writer of the Constitution, James Madison's on that cabinet. Thomas Jefferson, the writer of the Declaration of Independence, which is still quoted daily around the world, on that cabinet. Alexander Hamilton's on that cabinet. John Adams. How do you manage those guys?
Yeah.
These are the leaders of our country. When we think about our founding fathers, perhaps there was one father and the rest were founding brothers. And maybe Washington was a brother too, right? But managing those people, what an amazing leader that guy was.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how great of a job he did because he had a very short period and we had a lot of falling out and America kind of had to straighten itself out. I'm not going to say Washington straightened us out. We're still straightening ourselves out. But the entire 19th century was really fixing, and the first half of the 19th century was really fixing a lot of the problems that weren't addressed at the onset of our nation. So, boy, the way he managed Hamilton and Jefferson was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because I would have many of the same role models.
Yes, sir. Can I add one more?
Oh, yeah.
To that list?
Yeah.
Betty Friedan in the late 50s and 60s, Gloria Steinem, the things that they went out on a limb and did, whether I agree wholeheartedly with their actions or not, doesn't matter. They had guts. They had courage. Mm-hmm. And they were willing to shake up the foundation of this nation to do what they thought was right, to do the right thing. John Lewis, the leader of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in the 1960s, with what he did on the march from Selma to Montgomery, and what he's still doing, serving this nation and shaking it at its foundation, whether I agree with it or not, takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts, in a time when it was not easy, nor acceptable. Mm-hmm. And others, as we all know, lost their life fighting for some of those very same rights.
Yeah.
So, what great leaders they were.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't just talk it, they walked it, they lived it. They were people of action.
Yeah, put a lot on the line. You kind of usurped my line of thought there, because many of the people that I would look at through history, I would have had, some of those same names on the list. I'm assuming when you greet a group of new students on your team, it's a really diverse group of kids, right? Mm-hmm. How has the whole notion of diversity in particular, how does it complicate, what you do as a leader? Or from your experience, does it?
I think it's a valuable asset. I think we got to use it in a positive. I don't think it complicates it at all. I think it adds value to it. But you got to know how to tap into it. And you got to know how to tap into it without being offensive. You don't want to call somebody out and say, well, because you're different, what do you think here? No, I mean, you got to blend it in. But we are diverse people. And on different levels, even though that me and this person may appear to be the same, we're diverse. It's just a different type of diversity.
Yeah.
So tapping into that diversity and getting as much input in so many different ways. You talk about service, what best meets your needs? Here, we can do this, guys, or we can do this. Which one do we want to do today? You decide. We're going to get something effective out of both of it. Mm-hmm. You decide. Giving those kids a voice, and then through that voice, they begin to gain a little bit of character development, a little bit of maturity. They start to speak up a little bit, and now they're taking ownership, but they're doing it with their own thoughts and notions and backgrounds in mind. That's the angle they're coming from. Mm-hmm. So I think that's how we do a really good job of tapping into that diversity, giving kids a voice and some decision-making power.
Yeah, I'd ask you to respond to this, because I've thought it for a long time, and maybe I've been thinking the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. But diversity is a much bigger deal when all we're doing is defending who we are, where we come from, and how we're different.
Right.
If you put really diverse kids on a football team with a common goal, mm-hmm. and they literally have to work together mm-hmm. as a team to achieve, a lot of times diversity challenges become, because of what you do in practice, because of what your expectations as a coach, those types of issues, the issues that separate us, kind of fall to the wayside.
That's right. And
the issues of commonality bring us together just sort of naturally. I mean, is that a day-to-day, year-to-year experience you have, or is that just kind of wishful thinking?
No, they definitely bring us together. And I think that, honestly, diversity and whether it be racism, sexism, we've actually got 3 females on our team right now. One of the opponents that we played this year, they had a starting linebacker that was a female. So definitely sexism there. But racism and sexism, all those things go out the window because, like you say, we all have a common goal. We're all here for the same purpose. I haven't seen any at all of those negative qualities that really just bog down our society. I've never, as a coach, seen any of those on the team, which is perhaps why in the civil rights movement of the 60s, they decided to use athletics as a way to promote and streamline integration. And it had its challenges, but it wasn't because the sport trickled into society, it was because society trickled into the sport. Mm-hmm. We live in a community that really, in my opinion, as a whole, values diversity. We are a bit of a bedroom community here for the Research Triangle Park, and so there's a lot of people of a lot of different backgrounds. Give you a little idea, so our community's grown a lot. In the late 1990s, we had about 4,000 people living in our city. Now, like I said in the beginning, we've got over 12,000. So that's significant growth in a 20-year period, and it ain't because they had a lot of kids and decided to stay there. People are coming, but they're bringing those different backgrounds with them. And if you were to poll our players and say, how many of your parents went to this same school? Less than half of the 135 kids on our program. So, which has its own challenges because that sense of tradition and that understanding of who they are and where they're from and the way that we kind of do things here, you got to reteach those things. Mm-hmm. But no, we don't have much of a challenge with that. In the classroom, if I can elaborate there.
Yeah.
I do teach some low-level learners, but typically I've got some really advanced kids. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about our 3 rules. And I stole these 3 rules from Lou Holtz. I love them. And these are actually posted on my wall when they walk in. And these are the 3 rules, guys. Outside of this, you ask me if you got a question. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to do our very best to make the most of the opportunity that we're giving. And we are going to respect and love each other. You may not have to like them, but because we're here at the same time, at the same place, doing the same thing, we're going to love that about the person we're sitting around mm-hmm. because they're sharing the same burdens that we're sharing. And if you follow those 3 things, the rest of it kind of takes care of itself. Now you got to reiterate it. And sometimes people will say some things, but honestly, in my class, I've been fortunate. When some people do say some things, they didn't mean anything by it. It came out the wrong way. They repeated something that they had heard that they really didn't realize the implications. And the moment they realized that was offensive, they're apologetic, and we move on.
Figuring it out.
which
yeah.
is the way it ought to be.
Yeah. I gotta believe there are questions I didn't ask you that I should have. What aspect of influencing other people in whatever realm of life, what did I miss?
Right. I don't know. For me, and I did some thinking driving in. For me personally, I've been in the same job, essentially doing the same thing for the last 15 years. I've turned down 6 head coaching positions in that span of time because I feel like there's work to be done where I am. And the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So I think for me, it's important to understand what impact can I make where I am and make as great of an impact as what I possibly can with the opportunities that I'm giving. I think that's very important. And it's not about a title. It's not even necessarily about a leadership position that may be more powerful, but it's about doing the best I can with what I've got in that situation. And it's not about settling. It's not about complacency. It's about evaluating your situation. And where am I most needed? And at this time in my life, this is where I'm most needed. And my family, and keeping continuity and stability in my family is a big part of that. They're very involved in the community. If I didn't have that family, thank God I do, but if I didn't, probably would have taken some other opportunities. But in the meantime, instead of looking at the jobs I don't have, let me do the best job I can with the one I've got. Yep. And the rest of it will take care of itself later on. Because there's room for me to grow right here.
Yeah.
I heard Mr. Goldsmith say in a video I watched that the older he gets, the less aspiring he becomes, but the greater impact he has.
Yeah, very true.
I could 1,000% agree with that.
Well,
and that's okay.
I will tell you this, I just gotta say, if there were more people like you, there'd be less problems in the world.
Well, thank you.
And I mean that, and I just want to say sincere thanks.
Oh, thank you.
On behalf of everybody at the Center for Leadership Studies for taking time to share your thoughts.
Thanks for having me.